Right. So we're in the process of designing a homicide globe, we're calling it, and it basically visualizes the entirety of the world's violent deaths. Uh, and so the idea is that it's on a WebGL platform. It spins around, it's three-dimensional. You can zoom in on specific countries, but you can also get subnational data on states, on cities. So it's the first comprehensive data visualization of global homicide in the world. The data itself comes from a variety of sources. The primary source is the UN Office for Drugs and Crime, the UNODC, which gathers publicly available state-reported data on intentional and unintentional homicide. But that's not enough, because even within the UNODC, which is the most comprehensive data set out there, there's still huge gaps, especially here in Africa. We have pretty good information from South Africa, pretty good information from Kenya, decent information from Nigeria and a few other places, Namibia, but actually there's enormous gaps. So what we had to do was go out and actually solicit information from governments, from the Departments of Statistics, from police departments, from ministries of justice. So we've hoovered up from around the world information, not just from UNODC, but also from national sources and even city sources. So today we have about 85 to 90% of the world covered. We have longitudinal data, it's going back 10 years. But we also, almost most importantly, we have disaggregated data on homicide. In other words, who commits homicide? Who is the primary victim of homicide? What was the tool that was used to commit the violence? Was it a gun? Was it a bladed weapon? Was it a blunt object? What's the demographic breakdown in terms of males and females? So all of this information is gathered together in one single interface. It's a digital interface. The Homicide Globe will be launched most likely in March, possibly beginning of April this year, so quite soon. It's going to be launched in Brazil, which is not coincidental. Brazil has the most homicides in the world by total number. Over 50,000 people die violently in Brazil every single year. That's more than any other country: China, Brazil, India, South Africa. Latin America is also ground zero for homicidal violence. So we'll be launching in Brazil as a means of signaling the importance of the issue in Brazil, but also more generally for Latin America. We think that right now we live in an information-saturated world. We are inundated with data, inundated with reports. It's becoming more and more difficult to be able to access policymakers, decision makers, because they are themselves, engulfed with data. So one way to do that is by using data visualizations, using new technologies to present really complex data in simple, accessible, usable ways. So last year we designed something called the Citizen Security Dashboard. The dashboard basically gathers together innovative experiences in public security and justice provision. So across policing, penal reform, justice reform, violence prevention, we've gathered 1,300 different interventions across 20 different states of Latin America and the Caribbean, all of which is put into an online dashboard that can be accessed publicly. And it breaks all those interventions down according to their budgets, according to their focus areas, according to the time periods they've been ongoing, according to whether they have an evaluation or not attached to it. So all of the information is available, and you can search through the database in a very simple, accessible way, different kinds of variables to determine how these programs were composed, what were their effects, are they ongoing, what were their budgets. This kind of information may sound kind of dull, but actually from a public policy perspective, it's incredibly important to be able to know what's out there. And most importantly, it's critical to know what works and what doesn't work. Too often we go to these meetings and we showcase only those interventions that actually generated an alleged impact. And there's a whole range of activities that we try out that don't work. And yet politicians and decision makers and bureaucrats reproduce often interventions that don't work. So the challenge is, how can we actually give information that allows people to understand what works, what doesn't, and what don't we really know or understand works or not? So the Homicide Globe is global, and it's primarily focused on Latin America and the Caribbean from an advocacy perspective, but it's global. You can go to China or Russia or Brazil. The Citizen Security Dashboard is predominantly Latin America and a little bit of the Caribbean. It includes 20-odd countries in the region, a number of territories as well, because they're still territories. The information goes back to late 1990s, so around 1998, so we have over 20 years of data that one can search. And yeah, I think it's continuously being updated. I should add that the database was developed in cooperation with a number of partners. So it's not just the Igarape Institute, but also the Inter-American Development Bank, a group called Insight Crime, which also works in Latin America, and other supporters. So it's an ongoing exercise. We hope to refine it, improve it, expand it, and we'll be actually relaunching an updated version of that later this year.